Hello friends, welcome back to NRS Samay. This is your today's host Srikanth live from Los Angeles. And we have an interesting guest today on our show. All these years I was ignorant about the craft of photojournalism. I'm slowly realizing for myself that this craft is almost a universal form of mass communication. Writing and speaking both require the knowledge of a specific language, but the visual image can in many instances be understood by anyone and everyone, almost said and done. So facial expressions, emotions, movement, body posture, as well as composition, light and shadow can tell a story in the same way that words can. So I was browsing the internet to find out people who are working on ground on some key issues and then capturing this barely heard voices as pictures, photos, or something more interesting. And I stumbled upon the website of Poulomi Basu, a photojournalist. So I went to her website and had a quick look at her website, read through her stories, and it grabbed my quick attention, and I called her to request for an interview. And for all, NRI Samay is all about unheard voices, untold stories, and honest perspectives. And here we go. Today we have Poulomi Basu live with us from Mumbai. Poulomi, thank you very much for being with us today. Welcome to NRI Samay Radio, Poulomi.
Thank you, Srikanth and NRI Samay for inviting me to speak.
Thank you, Poulomi, once again. And Poulomi, you're a photojournalist. You're right now in Mumbai. You covered stories from Kashmir and also from many places. You're always on the move. You are in London too. Now my curious question, and the very first question is, where do you call home?
I guess I grew up in Calcutta, and that is always going to be home for me because that's where I grew up, and my original base and my mother is from there. But it's a good question because at this I find it very difficult to call one place my home because, my life is almost like sort of living out of suitcases in most of the time because I'm constantly on the move working on stories. But yeah, as far as home is concerned, I think I would define India overall as my home. And I work a lot on stories from my own country, although I live between UK and India. But I feel India is home, and because I understand the sensibilities of my people the best, and so that's home.
Awesome. And then, interesting, we are NRI Samay. Of course, we have some fascinating people who are already aware of it, but I am an ignorant man. I've been following your website from the past few days, reading about it. And how do you find the stories you work on, Poulomi? It's super interesting. What are the first steps when beginning to work with a new project? You worked on 4 or 5 projects that I'm seeing. Of course, 4 projects if I see it on your website. How do you find the stories that you work on? Very remote and very interesting.
Yeah, it involves a lot of research before you start working on a project, and you basically, while researching, you also sort of look into issues that are mostly underreported, within your own country. So that's how I start my project. Like, as far as Conquer Her Land was concerned, I got the idea after I read like a really small column in one of the national newspapers about the women going into the border. And I knew that something like this will not be taken up in a big way as far as Indian media is concerned, because Indian media is all about words on most times, I realized that the potential of a project like this, visually and in the times to come, as women becoming the paradigm of all the things that stand for and hold and uphold many issues in our country with relating to the border could become a really big project. So it's really a lot of the things is sort of researching on ground level and reading a lot and just talking to a lot of people and being tuned in to see how you can pursue a project. And a lot of the fact comes from sort of foreseeing what can go on to become a really important project. Even if it's important doesn't seem that magnified at this point of time, what could eventually go on to become a lifelong and a long-term project, So that's how I usually go about things.
Interesting. And let's start off with your work on this rural women bordering Indo-Pak area, which is very dangerous. So who are these women, Poulomi? As per my understanding, you are almost lived their life by staying with them for some time. And who are these women and what is their story? I've posted some pictures on Facebook and almost people who are totally not social, some of my friends called me and then asked me, hey, these pictures are interesting, what's going on? So what's the story and who are these women, Poulomi?
Well, these women are basically rural village women who are basically now a part of the Border Security Armed Force, which is known as the stepchild of the army. And they are basically, a lot of them joined the force, which, and then they are kind of living right now in acute conditions, as you know, in the borders. And so a lot of these women are actually village girls. And they came to BSF and they joined because I think India sort of saw it as a PR measure to bring women to the border, as they consider that a lot of women enjoy and want to do this because they wanted to come out and seek adventure, instead of just staying back home and the perceived notion of that women should be at home, not at war,
Right.
So these women are just one of our regular women that you see in the villages, and who incidentally are also the very tough women who are there at the borders. Yeah, and a lot of them are also sort of like children of ex-army soldiers and, people like that. These are these women, just ordinary Indian women doing extraordinary thing of being at the border. Yeah.
Absolutely. And then they're very young, when I see your pictures, they're very young. And when I'm saying I see your pictures, let me remind my all of our listeners on NRI Samay, you should definitely visit PoulomiBasu.com, POULOMIBASU.com, friends. And also, when I see these pictures, these women are very, very young, and do they understand where they're going actually?
At this point of time, I mean, they are very young women, and they claim to be 18, of course, but I'm not too sure about that. But, at this point of time, they have this sort of undefined idea of patriotism. For them, being able to wear the uniform is they see it as a massive privilege, and to be able to serve for the country, which is the classic notion of, to be able to serve in any of the armed forces or paramilitary forces. But I'm pretty sure they are, on the larger consequences of things, they do not have an idea as to where this thing is actually going. For them, it's really a matter of pride, and the fact that being a woman is an additional burden itself in their families, and to be able to go out and earn some money to give back into their families by joining the forces, by seeing it as a way of being financially independent, which comes as a surprise to most of us, is a change for them, For them, at least they're not being married off. At least they're doing something out there like all the other men were doing. So for them, their reality at this point of time is this, not from where it goes and how it goes, whether they'll be able to go get married 6-7 years down the line, or whether they will be able to, knowing AIDS is rampant in a lot of the Punjab borders and stuff, and how things are going to turn out in terms of even psychological warfare and, misogyny and all that, which we know is so deeply sort of ingrained in the military culture. It's really a matter of time to find out. But I think I have seen a massive change from the time when they were the barracks to their homes to at the border. And, it's been a significant change in them, yeah.
And which state or which place are we talking about here? How is the climate? How is the conditions out there, Poulomi?
Well, I was in the borders of Punjab up to Kashmir until the first line of control in Kashmir, from where it starts. And as we know, it can get it's very hot. It's very hot there. In the summers, it's really hot. In the winters, it gets very cold. So it's quite dire in terms of that. And a lot of the people women don't even have proper BOPs yet. So some of them, at least when I was there, had to live on camps and stuff, on tents. So it's desolate. It's undeniably beautiful. It's extreme weather. That's the kind of condition we're talking about, and extremely lonely. Yeah.
Very lonely, right? Yeah.
Yeah, very lonely place.
I realized until after reading your website, I realized that until 2009 we did not have women working in this sector of defense. So why did the government, in the first place, you mentioned it's a PR exercise. Is there anything more that the government thought about even before taking a decision to recruit these women?
Yes, they did. Yeah, they send the women to like patrol one of the sensitive borders because a lot of the there's the Indian borders are notorious and famous for like people smuggling and drug smuggling and human smuggling, and a lot of these things are performed by the female farmers. And being in India, you're not allowed to frisk a woman if you're a man, and all the soldiers who are there are men. So besides it being a PR exercise, this was also seen as a way to like bring the women in so that they can sort of catch the female smugglers and trick the farmers, in dry when time comes to, unless, of course, there are bigger issues and if they have to like fire.
Oh, okay. And when they were first put on charge near this line of control, were they properly trained, Poulomi? How did that go? All we hear is that in 2009 they were deployed, but how were they properly trained and they are well equipped with the defense?
Yeah, they had 38 months of training, intensive training, and then they, I think, had an additional few months of commando training. So, and I mean, from as far as like they studied like, everything from like weapon handling drills, commando, border security, disaster management, then like surveillance field craft, internal security, fire guns like AK-47, 57 machines, insult rifles, carbine, grenades, first aid, convoy exercises, explosives, IEDs. Yeah, they were trained in all of that. But as far as psychological training, I don't think. I mean, that's something I'm not too aware of. Besides what they are taught within, while being a part of in the barracks with the other sort of arms and ammunition training.
What's their life like? Because you've lived with them. Of course, for us, life is like going to work, coming back, and then thinking about kids, family, and then again going back to work. What's the life like? Borders are always far away from place where they live, right? Where do these women live? How far is their site, Poulomi?
How far? Sorry, can you repeat your question once?
Yeah, generally for us, it's like you commute to work, come back home. But how about the life of these women? Where do they live, and how far is this line of control, and what's their life like from morning to evening, if you could explain that?
Right. I mean, a lot of the work they do from morning to evening is just patrolling the desolate, barren lands, Like, really, their time starts very early in the morning, and, I mean, as like humorously as one of the girls had once told me that everyone knows that women take a lot of time to get dressed, but we have gotten used to get ready in a short span of time. Like, so their life is very much like the life of men who have to like do things fast and quickly and, spend most of the time in the borders patrolling and just, just eat there, be arm to arm with the men there and just, be there at the borders, frisking, doing nothing, and just sitting and waiting for something to happen.
Wow. And their houses are far off, is it?
Yeah, the houses are far. I mean, I met a lot of women from different parts of the country, because obviously, I mean, I wanted it to be like to see how geographically, because we live in such a big country, to see how a lot of these women were coming from different parts of the country. So yeah, I went to homes of soldiers who were from Punjab, Haryana. I went to places who were in Uttar Pradesh, like ex-Kashmiri Pandit, one of the girls was. I also visited homes in Bengal. So they were like quite a variety of women coming from all different parts of the country, which was quite an enlightening thing for me to see, because for me, like the idea was, okay, yeah, it's probably a North Indian exercise mostly, but it wasn't. They were from different parts. They've left home far behind and come very far. And yeah, and the mothers are very wary. Yeah.
Oh, wow. And these are women who are getting to work. You visited their families. who would take care of their kids, family when these brave women are patrolling the borders? Being in military is not a usual work, right? It's hectic, stressful, thinking about families. When we see movies like Border, we understand that men itself, they are drained out and they become super emotional, right? And many times they should be away from their homes. Walk us through with what kind of mindset these women are with right now, Poulomi.
Well, like a lot, like one of the women said when she went back home, her mother didn't quite seem to get her, didn't quite seem to see that she felt that she wasn't the person she used to be. So I think the alienation of being in a place like this is like, in some of the women, at least the ones I'm in touch with, have kind of taken a toll on them, and that's, I've tried to sort of show that in a lot of my photos where you just see them like blank, just completely like when they get time to like be on their own, just like completely they just blank out and think. And, like also a few of them have had some sort of like temper issues, like they're like sort of difficult to like talk to. I think they find it's a problem of reintegration, and also the fact that they had a lot of friends when they were training and they were in the barracks. They thought that they were forming a family outside their own family, but then soon they had to be separated from that. They had to instantly, everyone was deployed into different parts of the borders, and they just lost that all over again. They didn't have cell phones when they are there. So, I mean, it caused like there's a huge sense of alienation and disconnectedness, and but at the same time, I also, in 2011, when I went back, I also met a woman, a soldier who fell in love with a man at the border, and then now they're married.
Oh.
And now they're both posted great borders. So, you can fall in love even in a place of war.
Yeah, true. And that's good. At least they understand each other, and they know what their life is going to be like, rather than the usual one. Yeah. And when the recent rape incidents in Delhi came to light, there's another story that came to light in Gujarat, where men from our armed forces, or these officers from armed forces, are using tribal women, and more. There are some reported rapes that are done on these tribal women, committed on these tribal women. In the backdrop of hearing these heinous stories, when we talk about women in our armed forces, there needs to be a proper process that should be put in place to curb any kind of harassments and other things that goes on, right? So how are women coping to this new domain of being in defense and armed forces, Poulomi?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's quite difficult because while I was in one of the cantonments, like I faced a lot of trouble. On my first night, I had like people knocking on my door without, till like 3 in the morning, and I was very close to coming to a very bad situation, as you can understand. I was all alone on my own. They knew I was alone. I didn't know who was behind the door, but I managed to like pass the night and complain and get things done. And that itself, when I started thinking that, oh my God, it's insane that if this can happen to me in a day, like the first day before I can start my project, how are these women, handling situations so like high pressure and like in a place which is so like male, like intimidated by military, and men, especially in places where AIDS and other things are so rampant. I mean, it's difficult for them because mostly because they know that they might be, like they're doing these things although they're growing in numbers, they're still extremely alone and vulnerable there. So, and as on top of that, there's a lot of psychological warfare going on, which keeps happening. Like people constantly write and keep saying that India, like keeps coming out in like these horrible blogs and papers all over the country of both the sides actually, which say that India sent like 200 prostitutes on the border and things. So, I think these things are quite disturbing psychologically for them, extremely disturbing. And as much as they try to say that, you're not a man or a woman anymore because you're in the skin of it's like you're a soldier and you have that uniform, and for them it's like coming out of their own in skins or whatever. But at the same time, it's heavily like it's a very extremely vulnerable situation,
Yeah. Definitely, for me to imagine itself, because I was in an NCC camp, pretty much at a very young age. I have seen wherein young girls who came in there, and there were officers who were harassing them when they're very old people. The officers were more than mid 40s or 50s, and then they were harassing these young women. So I can understand how bad it is. Do you have any sense of what kind of rights these women have? Of course, if we talk about IT sector and all, they have their rights to protect these women, because these women are very alienated places, and it's not like doing a police job, right? At least women police have some kind of protection. Public is watching, and then they can go and complain. They can get quick justice. But these alienated places, it's really tough, right? What are the rights, Poulomi?
It is tough because, see, half of these places are like places access is extremely difficult, you know. It's difficult even for me to like constantly go there and be there over sustained periods of time, you know. According to like any other person, like these women have the same rights as we do, but we know what the law is like in terms of, you know, having, like, if they were to go through anything, what happens in military system stays in the military system and it doesn't go out. So it is very difficult. It's very, very difficult to sort of go in and find out exactly what is going on. So, you know, although, like, I mean, I have like one psychological sort of person coming and sort of, you know, working with them, but I don't know if that is still continued because I haven't been there recently. But as I said, it's like, it's a constant reminder for them that although they may be winning honors and advancing in numbers in the military, but when it comes to the group, they are still outside, alone, and vulnerable.
Yeah. We have a question coming up from Archana, Los Angeles. Poulomi, when you talk to them, is it all about patriotism? Is it all about patriotism, why they are doing this job, or is it also a job and financial security, and because of lack of other safer opportunities, they look for this dangerous job? Or is it a mix of both?
It's a mix of both. Thank you for the question. You're absolutely right. Like, a lot of these women, like one of the girls, they told me she didn't want a 9-to-5 job. She wanted to be outdoors. Now, that's a completely different reason from whether it's financial or whether it's the privilege to join the army. She just think she wanted the life to be outside, to be outdoors, to explore and experience, which is very much, you know, on many levels, it is a sort of a village girls or village children's life. You know, they're outdoors, they're outside, they want to be in those spaces. Whereas in other cases, there were women who told me they were being married off, so they came here to sort of, you know, escape from marriage and to be able to prove to their parents that they can earn some money and send it back home as well, and not just, you know, become an additional hand to be fed. So that's a very important reason why they're there. But the whole idea is that they give it like this entire big context of patriotism under which they seem to make this whole thing work by saying, you know, it's a great privilege to serve for the nation, and, you know, that's why we're here. You know, at the end of the day, it's a great thing because, you know, you're working for your nation. But the real reasons are all different. Like, I also met a widow whose husband, a very young widow, she was just 25, and she had 2 children. And her husband was in the BSF, and he died, and she didn't have a choice but to join because there was no one else to take care of her to feed the family. So she's left her children, and she's come here, and she's joined the forces. On another level, I met another girl who was married, and then her husband was having illicit relationships with other people. So she tried to and ran away with another woman, and the father-in-law tried to send her into prostitution, and she sort of ran away from all that and came and joined this as a form of, you know, revenge, to seek vengeance. She thought she can join the forces to be able to, you know, sort of find it as a way out. So there are several reasons why they're here, really, beyond just it being as a national pride context.
Yeah, and also on the other side, they're getting into this military arena, and this side is also as dangerous as the other side. Of course, we're dealing with the both sides are nuclear armed, and then they are always trying to get over each other. So it's a really tough place. Did you find any of casualties that they're doing okay, or do they get hurt? What kind of casualties did you witness there? How tough is that, Poulomi?
I think one of the casualties that happened when during one of the night patrols, one of the girls got seriously injured. She just fell down and then she went into serious trauma instantly, which is when it sort of became clear to me that she was already traumatized and just falling, just injuring herself, and just made it worse for her. And she just wouldn't want to and also for me, it was difficult to photograph a person who was in serious pain and didn't want to be photographed. But it was important to show it, just to see that sort of pain and trauma that was happening. But yeah, they do they get injured a lot during night patrols and other things. And a lot of them keep falling ill. We keep having a bit of depressive issues and stuff. So these things are happening. And there were, in terms of their casualties, I haven't witnessed anything. But while I was there, I have seen a man being shot trying to cross the border. I didn't see him getting shot, but I've seen him hang on the barbed wire dead. So that's something, seeing that, I am sure is extremely, extremely unnerving for the women, because it was, I couldn't deal with it. I just took the next day flight and I came away, because that's something you don't get to see, the extrajudicial killings that happen on the borders, because the BSF, it's their job, according to them, because their lives are going to be put on the line if they don't fire and kill sort of infiltrators who are trying to cross over to Pakistan. But at the same time, they are massive human rights abuse, and violations. So it's a very stressful situation, I can tell you that. No one would like to see a man dead hanging on a barbed wire.
Exactly.
That's graphic.
That's very true. And then I also, even in the midst of conversation, I want to really thank you, because you're walking us through the plight of these brave women who are patrolling. And it's so important to talk about all these topics, because these remote voices, these remote issues never come to light. And I'm super delighted that you're walking us through all this that's happening out there, Poulomi.
Thank you so much. It is. I'm always interested in working on ordinary people doing extraordinary things, because we are all capable of redeeming surprises, and those stories need to be told, not just stories of sensational things that's happening everywhere. We all get to know. We know that everything that needs to be reported gets reported, and a lot of things are lost on the way, as you said about the Gujarat lady, and most of these people don't make it to news, and we never get to know how many people are being raped without a bra left on the floor.
Right. And my question is, I've gone through your website and seen interesting topics that you spoke about. Women boxers is one of the topics that you covered from West Bengal. It was super interesting. My question is, covering about women, poor women, and seeing and listening about recent heinous rapes once every 20 minutes, I wonder what was media, an important pillar of democracy, doing all these days, Any idea how this mainstream media works and how you guys are actually bridging this gap? Can you put us a sense of what happens in mainstream media and how you guys, totally independent of what's going on, bridge this gap for me?
I'll tell you one thing. What the media does. In Indian media does, and in terms of it's a very word-dominated media here. It's an extremely word-dominated media, and some of the best newspapers in India are actually extremely word-heavy. So, as far as I am concerned, I think photography. I don't know how much you know, but in the 1980s, there was a huge movement in photography, which was mostly it was not objective photography anymore. It was subjective photography, when photographs become the document of the photographer's relationship to the subject, reflecting the photographer's ideas, political views, was that particular thing that's been documented. So, I think it's an important place. We're in a very important place today, and it is extremely important to bridge that gap between what you are seeing and what the person who you're documenting has to say. So we need to pass power back into the hands of the people who are being documented and spoken and talked about, because that's when you know that the real things can only happen and change can only possibly come through if you try to pass that power back into the hands of your subjects,
Right.
So in some ways, I think that's what photographers or journalists need to do. I think it needs to become a more sort of a participatory approach, where you pass power back into the hands of the person who wants to tell the story and needs to tell the story, the person's way, and then you work together, whether it's photography as a form of activism or photography as a form of journalism or photography as a form of documentary art. But, the fact that it has to be subjective and not just a moment captured in time and space, which was perfect,
Right. Very true. Very true. I can understand. We have a question coming right in from Srihari, Los Angeles. We hear the stories from Indian news media. For us, Pakistani army are the bad guys, and we hate them. When you talk to the army people, do they feel the enmity all the time, or do they feel the opposition army is just following the orders from the top? Is there a good army versus bad army at the lowest level?
No, I think there is. I mean, I've heard lots of sweet stories about how these guys came and they shook hands and it's not that bad between them, especially during certain occasions and if it's Eid or something else, I've heard nice things too from the soldiers, but I've also heard extremely bitter things about how the Pakistan forces are never there. They barely have floodlights, so everything is on this side of the army, and that's why they get infiltrated all the time, because they're not they're just not interested. They're just interested in crossing the border and coming heavily armed this side as militants or whatever. But yeah, you have you have people who have different opinions. At the same time, you have people who have shared that good times from each side of the border.
Right.
So there is a bit of both, because at the end of the day, these guys are just there sitting, trying to do their job so that they don't get fired and they don't lose their life, and their lives are not on the line.
Right. Right. Very, very true. Yeah, I hope Srihari has got an answer pretty much. Let's get a little bit to your work. I understand that P. Sainaji is your guru, as having a conversation earlier with you. And what's the most important aspect you learned from him? Photojournalism is something new. We're catching up. So share your experiences with Sainaji. What was his best advice, Poulomi?
I think what Sainath, as far as what I took from him, rather than him spelling these things out to me exactly, because good teachers never tell you exactly what to do. They just sort of outline the borders and then you go and you pick it up and you do it, was to see how he was so committed to one issue, for the rest of his life. And I think an issue that is heavily underreported, and if he hadn't talked about the farmer suicides and the women who are dying for their husbands who've left the world because they're completely in debt and he's been vehemently doing this for his entire life, and how to be committed to that one thing that you're doing because you seriously believe in it, it's a big thing. And I think that's what I learned from him, that whether you're with some media or a freelancer, that way you've got to be committed. You've got to believe in what you're doing, and you've got to do it. Because if you stop believing in what you do, then you'll never be able to do it. That's when your project is ruined or your story is ruined. And to be able to be committed to that thing long term for the rest of your life, self-initiated, whether it's going to be published or not, or someone's going to get it or not, I think that's what I learned the most. And that was it's important, it's important to be around people like that.
Exactly.
Because Sainath's a great photographer. He's a great photographer, incidentally. Not many people know about that, but he is.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because
he's not a photographer, but he's a great photographer. He's one person who's a subjective photographer, and for him, photography is evidence. He uses photography as a form of evidence to tell you directly what is going on there.
Right. And when we had a conversation, all we were talking about was about farm suicides and other things, but you brought in an interesting perspective. Sainaji is also a very good photographer. The fundamental question that including me, gets in when I hear to you, Poulomi, is, I want to bring up this interesting topic. We had some fascinating people who recently joined politics. They were earlier IAS officers, IRS officers like Kejriwal and all. When they come, there are few people who ask them interesting questions. Hey, I know the procedures, practices, and policies of how politics work. I've been following it. I know how I can change my place. But my fundamental question is, how do I get my livelihood? What's livelihood of a photojournalist? How do you make living, Poulomi? That's a very basic question I wanted to ask you.
Right, it's a very good question, because it's like, considering the print medium is on its way down terribly, it's a really good question, because I think the main thing to be a photographer, you have to be highly motivated, and highly, highly motivated point of view what you're doing. Otherwise it's difficult to make a lot of money out of photography, but there are ways. You need to understand that photography as a pure art form, as a form of whatever story you need to tell, you shouldn't mix it up with your commercial work. You should be able to do it independently of whatever work you're doing. So if I decide I'm going to make my money by, writing screenplays for something, but I keep photography separate. So that's a way of earning money. I mean, you should be able to differentiate between what will give you that money to pay your bills, and an additional income to be able to use it for your personal project. As far as I'm concerned, I mean, I worked out on my own, and then I have won a few awards, so I'm fortunate enough to get commissions. I mean, I worked for clients like New York Times, Financial Times, Monocle, like most of my clients outside of India. But it is a difficult profession to be in, and I do not refuse any work. For me, whatever work I get, whatever type of photography it is, or video, or whatever it is, I do everything. I take it up because I see it as work that will help me make that money to put it into something I really want to do for myself.
Right.
So, yeah, you have to be extremely motivated, and you have to understand that you can, if you want, pick up some other job, but make sure you continue to do this on the side, the money that will help you put back into this, whether you want to teach in a school and be a photographer at the same time, or whether you want to, be a picture editor somewhere and be a photographer, or you want to right. just be a photographer, or however you want to do it. But it is a difficult profession, and a very, very, it's a shame, because it's also the kind of profession where you see some of the most enthusiastic and motivated people, But it's a very place to survive. It's a difficult place to be in.
Right.
And you're
go ahead.
Your last consistently perform. At the same time, go back to issues that you committed in. So, yeah.
Yeah, and then also when we are talking about people who are on the line of control, it's also talking about people like Poulomi, because I heard from you that you had been in Chhattisgarh, Kashmir, and all this. In Chhattisgarh, it's almost like war zone, and I understand you'd been embedded with the Maoists, literally and physically. You've been seeing them live, so it's a really tough thing, right?
I think you have to be physically extremely, agile and very fit to be in this situation. It's tough physically, mentally as well. And I mean, especially if you're hanging around with one of the comrades and she's telling you that she gets malaria once in 15 days. I mean, that is terrible. And I've also been on camps, which are the last camp of Jagargunda in Chhattisgarh, which is a no man's land, and only helicopters fly there, and I had to go through an entire landmine road on my own, crossing Chintalnar and places where the bunkers that have been blown out are still lying there, because no one's been able to send anyone to get it off there, because they know they're going to die in any ambush if they even go to those roads. So the roads that are blocked. So people who live there, everything else is in abundance. Only illness is in abundance there besides anything else. Ration goes there once in 6 months. It's not just about the Maoists. It's also about the people who are living there, So these are very difficult places to be in, and you constantly feel that you're using other people's stock, whatever it is, even if it's a polythene bag or something. But, so I think I would advise, it's not advisable to even go to these places without having any training, because I feel these things are extremely lacking in our country. So I'm going to apply to bursaries and different places to get training on hostile management before going back to these places, because I think it's only responsible to be responsible, and not just for yourself, but also for people who are around you. It's extremely important to get a first aid training and sort of conflict management training.
Right. And Poulomi, even before I let you go, it's a very incredible session we had today. What's the ultimate goal of your photographs, and what do you want to say for people who want to pick up this art of photojournalism?
I think photojournalism is an extremely, extremely rewarding profession to be in, because, if I wasn't, and I'm incredibly lucky to be a photographer, because if I wasn't a photographer, I wouldn't have met half the people in my life who I've otherwise met by being a photographer, and built a relationship, from people far and wide, and have friends all over the world and in my country, remote villages to everywhere. This is incredible. If you weren't a photographer, you wouldn't be able to do it. To be able to be one, I consider myself extremely lucky, and I think if you're extremely motivated and you believe in what you are doing and you want to be a photographer, you should go for it. You should be wise and responsible about whatever you do, and but make sure that photography is what you want to do, but you have to be able to pay your bills at the end of the day. So you find a way to work that out however you want to, and if you want to really be a photographer, you will find that way. So that's advice to young people, and I think it's catching up in our country now. Lots of people are photographers now, but it's extremely difficult to be dedicated, and it's extremely difficult to, and I think the most important thing for me is to work on stories you do feel you have personal connections with, because from an outside perspective, it looks like I have, personal connections with these women, but I do. I come from a family where my mother's not been able to leave the country, or even my grandmother's never gotten out of the state, and now I see this bunch of young girls out of their villages going into the borders of the country. It's fascinating, and we've all, as women here, have made those little journeys, in our little small or big ways, and so you find those connections, you see what you understand and where you lie, and where sort of, where your interests are similar to the interests of people you're covering and talking about, and that's when you can create something which is extremely personal and important, and, So that's my advice to photographers, not just see what's outside in the world, but also see what's in your own home and in your backyard, because your stories can also be about your own family.
Wow. And any threats? Any threats that you encountered? And life is all safe, right? I'm just concerned. Talking about. Of course, we covered about Chhattisgarh in NRI Samay as well, on NRI Samay as well. So also we have Usha Ravelli asking from Hyderabad if Poulomi faced any situation where there was an ethical dilemma, where shooting may be compromising some kind of ethics, someone's rights, without meaning to. We have Usha from Hyderabad asking this question.
There's always an ethical dilemma when you're photographing situations. As I mentioned, when one of the soldiers had injured herself, and I knew photographing her, she didn't want to be photographed. She didn't want to be seen injured, weak, and that's not the way she wanted to be seen. But you can't forget you're a reporter as well, and it's important for you to tell the story. So, and the way I crossed that ethical barrier is by photographing her with a hand on her face, which sort of naturally came up at a point when she covered her face, and that's when I photographed her. And I think that was important, because by showing someone anonymous, you can still tell the story, and it can have that equal amount of impact. And at the same time, you're true to your ethical codes, And I think in many ways, it's important that the person who are in your photos know that they are in your photos, and you have to be honest and tell them, because with the online boom and media, everybody's going to see your work. Everyone's going to see them, even if they don't realize the larger impact of the photos that are being taken. The other family members might find it bad,
right.
problem. So you have to be media, you have to be extremely honest with your subject. And you have to tell them that everyone's going to see it. And if after that they're willing to be in your photos, then you've got to go with it. So, yeah. And a lot of ethical issues like that I've had. I mean, I photographed in New York, like, teenagers in teenagers in abusive relationships, which is, a lot of them have been raped severely several times, and I photographed them. So, and it all depends on what the subject wants, and you have to tell them honestly what you're doing, and at the same time, if there are photos you can shoot anonymously to protect the identity of your subject, at the same time tell the story, you do it. So there are ways, yeah.
Absolutely. And Poulomi, we almost took 45 minutes of your time. I really appreciate you being patient, explaining and answering all our questions. Truly incredible work. It's as important as people working on the line of control. Your work is phenomenal, inspirational, and then God bless you, Poulomi. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Samay, and for listening to me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Poulomi. Friends, that was Poulomi Basu live on NRS Samay, and explaining about the lives of women who are bordering the India-Pakistan LOC line. And she has brought up many interesting things in this 45 minutes discussion. As I mentioned earlier, Poulomi Basu is a photojournalist, and she was live from Mumbai. All these years, including me, I was ignorant about the craft of this photojournalism, and Poulomi has truly enlightened me personally as well about what this photojournalism means to the society and people living around us. So I hope you had wonderful time listening to Poulomi Basu. You can visit her website, poulomibasu.com. It is POULOMIBASU.com. There are other incredible stories that she has covered. The life of women who have taken up to boxing to get over the poverty, and many important topics that she covered on her website. Do visit poulomibasu.com. And also write your comments to nrsamay@gmail.com. You can also post your comments on Facebook page, facebook.com/nrsamay. We'll be posting this recording of discussion and conversation with Poulomi Basu on Facebook page, on our Facebook page, facebook.com/nrsamay. Also, you can listen to all our archives on youtube.com/nrsamay. Follow us on Twitter, twitter.com/nrsamay. Thank you very much for tuning in today, and we appreciate your time. Have a wonderful weekend ahead. Thank you, friends.